So here's a puzzle for you. How can a country's foreign policy seem like a complete and utter mess of contradictions, while also being driven by a single, ruthless goal? That is the absolute heart of the mystery when we look at Joseph Stalin's diplomacy in the lead up to World War II. Was he a master strategist playing 40 chess, or was he just reacting to chaos? Well, that's what we're going to dig into right now.
Okay, let's just dive right in. Look at this timeline. The policy swings are absolutely dizzying. In 1928, Stalin's big idea was to call moderate leftists social fascists. They were the main enemy. Then, by 1935, a complete 180, he's pushing for a popular front, which means allying with those same people against the rise of actual fascism. And the final shocking twist in 1939? He makes a pact with the fascists themselves, with Hitler's Germany. How on earth do you explain these wild U-turns?
And that right there is the big question historians have been wrestling with for decades. Was Stalin just stumbling from one crisis to the next, basically making it all up as he went along? Or was there some kind of consistent, hidden logic guiding every single one of these seemingly contradictory moves? Let's explore both sides of that argument. All right, so first up, let's make the case for consistency. This view says that underneath all the surface-level chaos, Stalin was relentlessly chasing one single thing: the survival and security of the Soviet state, and, of course, his own power inside it. You know what? This quote from Stalin himself really says it all. It just perfectly shows his total dismissal of lofty ideas like world revolution when compared to the very practical, very real need for Soviet industrial strength. At the end of the day, for him, a strong USSR was the only thing that actually mattered. And this wasn't just some passing thought. He actually formalized it into his core doctrine: socialism in one country. See, his rival Trotsky was all about pushing for a global revolution. Stalin said, no, 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 the USSR has to become a fortress first. This theory wasn't just some academic idea. It became the absolute bedrock of his entire foreign policy. So with that core doctrine in mind, all these other things start to make a lot of sense. Every decision, whether it was cozying up to the West or shaking hands with Hitler, you can trace it back to these goals. First, protect that huge, vulnerable Western border. Second, buy as much time as possible to build up the army and industry. And third, and this is absolutely crucial, make sure the capitalist powers were busy fighting each other, not uniting against him. Now here's where it gets really interesting. This slide shows you his method. See, the thing is, he was always playing both sides. He had his foreign minister, Litvinov, out in public at the League of Nations talking all about collective security against Hitler. But back in Moscow, his right-hand man, Molotov, was keeping the secret channels to Berlin wide open. He never, ever put all his eggs in one basket. But that's only half the story. Now let's flip the script and look at the other side of the coin. The argument that this supposedly straight line was actually just a trail of reactive stumbles, ideological blunders, and frankly, catastrophic miscalculations. Okay, let's go back to that whole social fascist policy. The argument here is that this wasn't some clever foreign strategy. Not at all. It was all about Stalin's internal power struggles inside the Soviet Union. He forced German communists to fight other left-wing parties instead of focusing on the actual rising fascist threat. And the fallout from this? Well, it was just catastrophic. By splitting the German left, this policy literally helped pave the way for Hitler's rise to power in 1933. This was no strategic masterstroke. It was a blunder so huge it forced a complete, panicked reversal of Soviet policy just a few years later. You can even see these massive shifts in who he put in charge of foreign policy. Each replacement wasn't just a new face. It was a signal of a fundamental change in direction. You go from the pro-German Chicherin to the pro-Western Litvinov, and finally to Molotov. And his appointment was a clear, unmistakable signal to Hitler that Moscow was ready to make a deal. Then you have the Munich Agreement in 1938. This was a huge turning point. Britain and France basically fed Czechoslovakia to Hitler to appease him, and they didn't even invite the Soviets to the meeting. Stalin felt completely and utterly betrayed. You can just hear the bitterness in this quote. His pivot away from the West wasn't some long-term plan. It was a direct, angry reaction to getting stabbed in the back. And this is where his paranoia at home started to completely sabotage his goals abroad. He just spent years purging his best, most experienced military officers. So when he decided to invade Finland to secure his border, the supposedly mighty Red Army was humiliated. It suffered over 125,000 casualties. His goal was security, but his own actions made his army dangerously weak. And here is maybe the biggest inconsistency of them all. Think about it. The whole point of the pact with Hitler was to buy time, right? But when that time was about to run out, incredible intelligence was pouring in from all sides about an imminent German invasion. Stalin just refused to believe it. He dismissed it all as British provocations, just wishful thinking. He left his country catastrophically unprepared for the one attack he had spent more than a decade trying to delay. Okay, so we've got these two completely different pictures of Stalin. The master planner on one hand, the panicked reactor on the other. So how do we put them together? How do we square this circle? Let's try to get to a final verdict. And this table, looking at the Nazi-Soviet pact, just lays out the entire debate perfectly. From the consistent view, the pact was a genius move. It bought 2 crucial years and gained a buffer zone. But from the inconsistent view, it was a total disaster. It was an ideological betrayal that was built on the completely flawed assumption that France and Germany would get bogged down in a long war. When France fell in just 6 weeks, Stalin was suddenly left facing a triumphant Hitler all alone. So what's the takeaway here? It seems Stalin wasn't just one or the other. You could say he pursued his core goals, Soviet survival, Soviet security, with ruthless, terrifying consistency. But the methods he used to get there? They were wildly inconsistent, full of U-turns, huge blunders, and desperate improvisations. His ends were fixed, but his means were dangerously flexible. And at the end of the day, we absolutely cannot forget the human cost of all this. Regardless of the strategy, or the lack of one, the failure to be truly prepared for the German invasion led to a conflict that would claim the lives of an almost unimaginable 27 million Soviet citizens. Which leaves us with this final, big, lingering question. Was Stalin's policy a brutal but necessary path to survival for his country? Or was it a series of catastrophic gambles that ultimately led to one of the highest prices ever paid in human history? This isn't just a historical debate. Understanding this kind of consistently inconsistent strategy helps us analyze leaders today who might also seem erratic. It forces us to ask, are we just watching random chaos? Or is there a ruthless, single-minded plan playing out in ways we just don't see yet? That is the enduring puzzle at the heart of Stalin's legacy.